Good afternoon, everybody. This is Mike Lewis with Healthmonics. We'll give everybody a minute or two to sign on, and then we'll get started. Please let me know. We have a chat feature down the bottom that you can ask questions for, and then we will move forward real soon. Thank you. All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. This is Navigating MIPS Performance Year 2020. We are here to discuss the final rule that came out about a week or so ago. My name's Michael Lewis. I'm with Healthmonics, and we also have on our call, and they will be running most of this webinar, is Robin Roberts and Joy Rios from Chirpy Bird Consulting, Inc. So for you guys to know, on GoToMeeting, you'll see on the right side of your screen, there's an option for our handouts, as well as a portion for questions. We will try to answer as many of the questions at the end of the video, at the end of the webinar. Also, for anybody in attendance on this webinar, we have a discount that will be applied to if you purchase MIPS in 2020. If you type out discount code 2020 rule in our sign out screen, that will give you a discount based upon the package. For instance, our Plus package will give you $40 off each of your providers. Here at Healthmonics, we are dedicated to bridging the gap between quality initiatives around key health system initiatives and revenue improvement. This is delivered through solutions for measuring, tracking, and improving financial, operational, and quality outcomes. First off, optimizing revenue cycle. We're here to work with you from the beginning of your billing all the way through MIPS reporting. Reducing administrative overhead. Our system is built so that you have to do less work to report MIPS and score better. Closing the gaps in care. You want to be able to attack those patients that may be missing their quality data, as well as those providers that aren't performing as well as the rest of your organization. Driving organizational growth and being a community hero. I'm going to turn it over to Joy, who's going to take it from here as we dive into the 2020 final rule.
Thank you, Mike. It's a pleasure to be here with you all today. So thank you for joining us and taking the time to have this conversation. You know, it can be very stressful considering all the changes that take place and all the things that you need to keep track of on an annual basis. So we understand that MIPS sometimes feels like a moving target, and we're here to help you navigate through it. So today we want to review three main things. One, really help you understand the eligibility and reporting options. Much of that has remained the same, but it's still important to keep abreast of all the details. We're going to look at the scoring and payment adjustments and really have a bit of an in-depth conversation around the budget neutrality of the program and how it can affect your revenue. And then also the specific changes to the performance categories. And that is something that you absolutely need to be aware of so that you can adjust your strategy, hopefully, and be a little bit more proactive for the 2020 year. So starting with eligibility, happy to report that the 2020 eligible clinician list is the same as it was in 2019. So the clinicians that are listed on this slide are the types of those that are eligible to report MIPS, if they also meet some other requirements that we're going to go to. So no major change from 2019 to 2020, but as we do like to say, if you have an NPI number, MIPS likely applies to you. So if you're looking at the screen, this column on the left, those clinician types have actually been eligible for the program since 2017. So they have had a longer time to ramp up and get familiar with the program. The clinicians on the right side of the screen have only been eligible since the 2019 reporting year. So if you happen to be a clinician type on the right side of the screen, MIPS may feel somewhat new to you still. If you are not one of these clinicians, or you do not have any of these types of clinicians in your medical practice or organization, then you are exempt from reporting. All right, so let's talk about some of the ways in which CMS provides some exemptions and kind of trying to lay it out to make it quite easier for folks. So if a clinician is newly enrolled in Medicare as of 2020, then they get 1 year of a free pass. So they would be automatically exempt if they're a new Medicare provider. The biggest eligibility exemption really falls under the low volume threshold, and this was something that was introduced by CMS in the performance year 2019 and is continuing on for 2020. And so really what they look at is if there are 3 different aspects of covered professional services. So they look at the dollar amount of allowed charges. They look at the number of beneficiaries who actually receive services, and then they also look at the number of services that were provided. And so the thresholds for each of those are outlined here. CMS looks in 12-month snapshot segments, and so if a clinician or a group, combined, bills less than $90,000 for their Part B covered professional services within either of those snapshot periods, if they see fewer than 200 Part B patients, or if they provide 200 or fewer covered professional services to Part B patients, then they are exempt. Now, the last piece is if they are in an advanced alternate payment model. So if they are what is called a qualifying participant, or if they have QP status. So people don't always know throughout the year whether or not they have QP status. CMS determines that each year. That essentially every 3 months they look at an alternate payment model's entity participation list, and they look to see who is included, who is on that list. And so the times in which they make those determinations is who's on that list at on March 31st. Towards the middle of the summer, they look again on June 30th, and then again on August 31st. And one detail that I like to point out to folks, I think it's important to note, is that that third snapshot date, that August 31st date, the information of who is on that list as a qualifying participant is often not shared until December. And the place that you would check that would be over on the Quality Payment Program website. All right. Now, if folks have actually qualified for an exemption, there are opportunities to opt in and still report if they meet 1, 2, but not all 3 of those low volume threshold criteria. And so I kind of want to point out what are the benefits or what happens if you choose to opt in. First of all, if it shows that you are, you can be exempt either as an individual or as a group, but you decide to report anyway, if you're opting in, you will receive the performance feedback. So you're going to get detailed information of how you've done, including cost feedback, which is very helpful. You will receive a MIPS payment adjustment, and that can be both positive or negative or neutral. So there is a risk factor that if you're opting in, you could potentially get a penalty if you do not perform. Your data will be published on the Physician Compare along with the other folks who have also submitted. So folks that are eligible, a lot of these details go and get published and are made publicly available. It is through the Physician Compare website where you can see the overall score and even breakdown of categorical scores. And essentially, those that opt in will be assessed in the same way as the MIPS eligible clinicians who are required to participate and are therefore automatically included. Now, there's one detail. So say you are not opt-in eligible. If you meet all 3 criteria, but you decide to report anyway, you will still receive performance feedback from CMS. So there is a benefit to having an understanding of where you are and allowing you to prepare for future years. And your data can also be published on Physician Compare. However, if you voluntarily report, and again, meet all 3 of those criteria, you will not receive a payment adjustment based on the data that is submitted, and you will also not be included in the calculation of benchmarks for quality measures. So you just get excluded in that area. And one thing that I have learned in recent weeks is that part of the QPP attestation website, there's a new button in there that you have to click that says, I am opting in. So you're going to want to make sure that if you are submitting that data, that you essentially make it official by clicking that button. And one reason that we really like to point out and look at the eligibility requirements is because your situation can be different if you are reporting as an individual or as a group. And so HealthMonix has done a really great job of highlighting and sort of blogging a lot of these details. They have a blog post you can go back to kind of break this down, but what you're looking at on the screen is just the overall numbers of an assessment. And so in this particular case, they had a clinician practice that I believe had more than 40 clinicians, but of their 40 clinicians, only 2 of them were eligible. And so they had an opportunity to break down, the cost of if they were only going to report for those 2 eligible clinicians and leave the other 38 out, or if they decided to report as a group and include everybody so that they could all benefit from the work that was being done. And so one thing to think about is that, if you decide to report as a group, every clinician in that practice will receive the same reimbursement rate and the same score. And so if somebody is already doing the work, it does often make sense for the group to get credit for it. And so you can see, we've applied here and updated the numbers because what we'll talk about next is the budget neutrality of the program. And so on the amount that is estimated to be available for incentives, if you can apply that to everyone within that group, you can see on that second line here that an estimated 10% incentive would, equate to some serious dollars. So even though there might be additional vendor costs, that the overall return on that investment and working together to make sure that everybody is kind of on the same page or rowing the boat in the same direction, as I like to say, it can seriously remove or reduce a lot of administrative burden and also really support your bottom line. So I really want to make sure that you understand the budget neutrality aspect of the program. And this is something that has been in place from the beginning. The merit-based incentive payment system is a self-funded program. And so the money that is paid out to, in incentives is actually what is also taken in penalties. So you can think of it, the money that it has been removed from those who did not pass the performance threshold, those dollars are what is used to pay the folks that have done the work and earned a higher score. And as we look at the policy and the incremental, stepped approach of, more percentage being at risk, the first year of the program, there was 4% of Medicare Part B dollars at risk. Then it went to 5%. This current year that we're in now, there's 7% at risk. And then next year is the first year where it lands at 9% and is anticipated to stay at 9%. So as you're looking at this screen, one thing to take note of is that the penalty side is a fixed amount. So the policy aligns very well with the predicted or actual numbers. But because it has, CMS has made an attempt to gradually get people on board by making it easy to avoid the penalty at first, and then, not a little bit harder the next year, and you're going to see the stepwise fashion of, how easy it is to avoid a penalty or how difficult. That basically what you see in the predicted or actual bar chart is that it was super easy to avoid a penalty at first, so there wasn't as much money to be shared on the incentive side. So in the 2017 performance year, people that scored 100 points out of 100 points, the max incentive for their payment year, which would be this current year, was 1.88%. And that is also including a scaling factor. So there is, the 4 to 9% that is at risk, but they've also set aside $500 million for anybody who qualifies for, anybody who qualifies or earns what is known as an excellent performance status. And so in the first year, that was, that allows people to get an additional 0.5% tied to their incentive, and that X scaling factor can go up to 3. And what we've seen is that it's actually been less than 1. So that's why, if somebody got 4% and times the scaling factor, the number for incentives actually went down. So you can see that it's incrementally improving. Year 1, not that much incentive dollars was available. It is getting better for year 2 in the 2018 performance year versus 2020 payment year. This year, it's jumping up to 4.69% estimation. And then for the 2020 performance year and 2022 payment year, you can start to see that jump. So they're estimating that there is going to be essentially more people that are going to get penalized and the money that is taken from that will be able to be, redistributed to the folks who earn an incentive. All right, so that's plenty, and this is probably one of the more confusing aspects of the program, especially when people think, is all of the work that I'm doing, is it worth it? And you can start to see that over time, absolutely it is. If you got a 10% raise for getting a score of 100, then that's, definitely something to write home about. Another piece that's important for, within the final rule, this actually applied to the 2019 performance period. This is basically identifying that when you get feedback from CMS, if you are reviewing it and find that there has been an error or something looks off, if you're not understanding what happened, or maybe there could be any number of mistakes that happen, but it's up to you to identify that something is wrong and let CMS know that you would like a targeted review. And so part of the final rule is putting a timeline around that, and you basically have 60 days from the time that your performance feedback was released to you in order to let them know that you would like them to look at it. So unfortunately for the 2019 performance period, we are out of that 60-day window. So if you are logging into the QPP to see your feedback for the first time, unfortunately we are past the deadline to submit for a targeted review, at least for this current year. Okay, let's look at how the PACE is changing. There are new thresholds every single year. As I said, they started out the program making it very easy to avoid a penalty. So just to, hear me out, that first year you could avoid a penalty by earning 3 points. It was super simple. You could put one claim or one code on one claim and avoid that penalty. The following year, in 2018, it rose to 15 points, which is also relatively easy to do. Could have been done through one category, one performance category. You could have focused on that, and you could have avoided the penalty. Right now, in our 2019 performance year, you can avoid it with 30 points, which you cannot do with one category alone. It requires, work and focus in a minimum of 2. And then for next year, they've stayed true to their word that it is increasing somewhat significantly. So it is now going up to 45 points. And to let you know that, let's just say you get 44 points. Will you receive the full 9% penalty? Thankfully, no. So what will happen is if you, in 2020, if you earn 0 to 11.25 points, like that's the cutoff for the full 9% penalty. 11.26 to 44.99, they basically have it on a linear scale. So you will not receive a full 9%, but some portion of that. If you earn exactly 45 points, you avoid a penalty, but you get 0 adjustment. So that's neutral territory. You'll have no change to your Medicare Part B reimbursement rate. And then at 45.01 all the way to 84.99, that is where you get into incentive territory. So there is a positive payment adjustment that is greater than 0, up to 9% on that linear scale, and including that X factor of 3. So depending on how many people, again, get that penalty, we'll see what that ends up being. And then this year, or for 2020, CMS set the excellent performance threshold to 85, and that's actually 5 points up from what they had proposed it to be. So they had originally said that it was going to be 80, but it's even higher. So those that score between 85 and 100 points will also get that positive adjustment that is greater than 0 and up to that 9% with that X factor scaling, plus an additional payment adjustment that starts at 0.5%, but could go up to as much as 10%. Something like it's pretty, so it's significant and interesting. So if you are considering, what is my goal? What do I want to aim for? We're always going to tell you to shoot for the best you can possibly do, but getting past a score of 85 puts you into that excellent performance category. All right, let's check out the category weights. I think that this will be good news for many of you. It's basically the same. So they had proposed that cost would go up by 5% and quality would go down by 5%, and otherwise it would, it would remain the same. But they went back on that. And so I think it has a lot to do with the fact that people don't feel like they have their heads fully wrapped around the cost category. So had it gone up to 20% of the score, I think people might have truly struggled. And so that we get so they've landed that we get one more year where quality will be worth 45% of the total score. So quality is still king, as we like to say. It's worth the most. Promoting interoperability will remain at 25%. Improvement activities will also remain at their 15%, and cost will also be at 15%. However, it is important to remember that the program mandates that cost be worth 30% of the score by 2022. So we're not super far off, and we'll see how this all plays out. But they had intended to basically increase this category score by 5% every single year, and by them not doing that, who knows? Maybe next year they'll increase it by 10%, or we'll see. So just dropping that in there as some of my thoughts around this. All right. Another piece that is important, just kind of the detailed information on the administrative side of the final rule. There are several cases in which CMS will re-weight the performance category, and that can be due if there's inaccurate data, unusable data, or somehow data that has otherwise been compromised. And that can be due to circumstances that are outside of the control of the clinician or its agent. So typically, those are events like natural disasters. Not always, but typically. And so CMS can take into account, what control a clinician had directly over a circumstance, and also what control the clinician had indirectly through its agents. In some cases, data may be somehow compromised, and not by a natural disaster. So maybe there was a data breach, or some ransomware attack or something like that. It is entirely possible that the clinician themselves or a third-party intermediary, even somebody like HealthMonix, can notify CMS if they have been impacted. And in general, in those cases, the points would be redistributed to the promoting interoperability category or the quality category, and then in very rare cases, they would redistribute it over to the cost category. Okay, let us now get into some of the category details. Quality, as I mentioned, will remain at 45% of the overall score. You're still going to need to report 6 quality measures, and one of those must be an outcome measure or a high priority measure if the outcome measure is not available for you or your specialty. They have increased the data completeness requirement. And so this is probably the most important change for the quality category. It is currently at 60% for the 2019 performance year. It is increasing to 70% next year. And so we're not just looking at Medicare Part B patients, we're looking at all payers. So for claims, if people are, that's the only exception. If there is an individual reporting via claims or a group that can only go up to 15 clinicians, groups larger than 15 are not allowed to report via claims. But that is the only exception where they're only looking at Medicare Part B patients, and they would be looking at the 70% of your Medicare Part B. All of the other methods for reporting, they look at all payers. So that includes your QCDR, that includes registry, MIP or MIPS CQMs, those within your EHR. Again, all payers. So nobody gets left behind. And one of the biggest pieces to remember, and especially considering we're looking at such a high data completeness threshold, is that it's super important to have a quality strategy in place as soon as possible, basically as the year turns over to the next year. Because if there are any mistakes or adjustments that need to be made in your, workflow or documentation, you want to be able to understand and catch that early so that you can make the changes and perform well as needed. The other thing to consider is that they have taken quite they've hacked away a little bit at the measures. So there's 43 measures that have been removed that were available in 2019 that will not be available in 2020. They've only added 4 new measures, so there's not too much that's new be available. But I would say most importantly to remember or to really pay attention to is that there's 82 measures that have updated specifications. And so you would want to go review the measures that you have, and if they do happen to have a change in, like a substantive change in their spec, you're going to want to make sure that you and your team, anybody who's involved in collecting data, knows what those are so that nothing falls through the cracks. More measures are now topped out, and that is an important thing to know because a topped out measure, in the past may have been worth the full 10 points, but maybe, based on the benchmarks and people performing super, super well in it, they've lowered the maximum number of points. So it's possible that some measures can only earn 7 points, even if you get 100% performance rate. So it's really important to make sure that, if you have your quality measures selected, you want to be able to compare them against these changes and pay attention to whether or not their topped out status has changed. And one way to do that is that our the benchmarking spreadsheet, the data that tells you how much each quality measure is worth, like how many points at what performance rate. They have not released that yet. I anticipate that will come out sometime in December, but that is definitely a detail to look out for so that, it can help you kind of build your strategy even more. And then last but not least, the other change that the final rule made is that large groups that don't meet the performance, they will no longer receive 1 point. So if they did that as a courtesy, basically, hey, if you're going to attempt to try for this measure, we'll give you the 1 point for trying, and that has now gone away. So at this point, I'm going to pass it back to Mike to share some additional information about quality.
Hi, everybody. We're going to take a break from the 2020 report to go over how MIPS Pro can help you get where you need to be with MIPS reporting. First of all, MIPS Pro is streamlined for your success. We have direct integrations with a number of the large EMR systems as well as some of the small specialty EMR systems. We also have the ability for you to upload spreadsheets into our system, not only Excel files or CSV files, but you could upload your billing files, your 837s and your 835s. You can also upload your QRDA1 files and CCD files. We take that information all into our system and give you real-time performance dashboards where you're able to take a look at each one of your patients and individual visits and help you attack those gaps in care. There's drill down capabilities allowing you to look into each measure, see what type of questions you're missing, see what answers you're missing, I apologize, as well as looking at individual outliers, whether it is a provider that is performing poorly or a patient that doesn't have certain questions answered in their quality data. We also have the ability using these drill down capabilities to help you increase your score and, as Joy pointed out earlier, increase your revenue. There's a lot at stake in 2020. We are already hearing the number of people that are going to have issues with a lot of the different quality measures being topped out, as well as a lot of the quality measures having higher goals. Also, we are simplifying end of year reporting. You can work with our top of the line support team to give yourself the best scores, easiest, and the best way to do it is working with one of our consultants here at HealthMonix. As I stated earlier on the previous page, we do have the best team here. Technical support, we have data gurus. Oh, can we go back a page? Sorry, thank you. Technical support, we have data gurus that are ensuring the data integrations are seamless. We have a lot of systems that we work with, and we're here to help you get the best score possible. Experienced customer support team. Our support team people have helped thousands of providers in the previous years report from PQRS days all the way through the MIPS days. And on top of that, we do have the MIPS expertise here to help you get to the end line. Here's a picture of what one of our dashboards look like, showing you where you fit in with your measures according to your decile. You could also break this down by MPI, quality points, which one are your 6 best measures that you're going to report on, as well as you could dig in directly into the patient visits. You can take a look at what patient measures are associated with passing or not passing the score. You could take a look at this page and you could see, very similar to some other programs that you use, how we show you what measures that you are passing and not passing so that you could attack those gaps in cares that I mentioned earlier. I'm going to toss it back over, or actually over to Robin, as she's going to take us close to the end of this webinar.
Thank you, Mike. So continuing on with the 2020 rule changes, we're going to talk about the promoting interoperability requirements. There are not too many significant changes to report here. The 90-day reporting period that has been allowed by CMS will continue. You still require the 2015 certified EHR technology to participate in this category. The performance-based scoring will remain intact. There's a couple of changes to the measures that were available this year. First and foremost, CMS is removing the Verified Opioid Treatment Agreement measure, and they are now making the Query of Prescription Drug Monitoring Program, known as TDMP, optional. You can report it now as a yes or no instead of a numerator and denominator. Those requirements are something that MIPS Pro can help you with and also help you facilitate submission of. Again, not too many significant changes here. Additionally, they are continuing automatic exemptions based on clinician credentials. If you're on this list here, you are still allowed to be exempt from the promoting interoperability or PI category. These 25 percentage points overall would be reallocated to the quality category if you have an exemption. There are other additional exemptions that still exist through application, but these ones based on credential type will be continued in the 2020 performance year. Let's talk about improvement activities. There are some changes here to report that we'll get to in a moment, but just like the promoted interoperability category, the 90-day minimum reporting period will continue. There are still more than 100 improvement activities available. Depending on your size and the weight of activities, you will report anywhere from 1 to 4 activities, 40 points total required through the selection of high-weighted activities, and 20 points on the medium-weighted and 10-point activities for the smaller groups, or for the larger groups, pardon me. If you are rural, HPSA, or non-patient facing, it is a 20-point requirement. There are some significant updates that I remarked on for the improvement activities. When we look at the next slide, you will see that if you are reporting as a group, that in order to attest to doing the activity as a group, more than 50% of your MIPS eligible clinicians within the group need to have participated or performed the activities, again, for that minimum 90-day window. That means if you are in a group of 4 eligible clinicians, 3 of them will have to attest to having performed that activity for the same continuous 90-day performance period. And that is very, very important, definitely a notable change from last year. It is also very important to double check that the activities you plan to use may still exist or that the requirements are still the same. CMS has added a few improvement activities, they have modified 7, and they have removed 15. They've done this for a variety of reasons. Either the improvement activity is in its theme is represented in another activity, they may have consolidated some, they feel that the measure is no longer a metric of improvement. So please, if you're continuing to persist in using the same IA year over year, you're definitely going to want to go back to those tables at the end of the 2020 final rule to make sure that what you're choosing is still going to be there. Moving on to cost. Cost will remain at 15% this year. It has not changed its overall weight. I'll repeat that cost remains at 15%. CMS continues to automatically calculate data from administrative claims, meaning there is no reporting required on your part. They do track this data over the entire calendar year, from the first date of service on January 1, 2019, to the last service on December 31st, 2020. January 1, 2020, till December 31st, 2020, Performance year is the full calendar year. They have made changes to the 3 measure types. There is a change in name that MSPB has a slight modification that used to be known as Medicare spending per beneficiary. It is now Medicare spending per clinician beneficiary. This has to do with some edits to the measure itself, where they are now assigning responsibility for services to a larger number of clinicians. They've also made improvements to adjust the risk timeline, and this ultimately helps them avoid assigning costs that are incurred before a clinician begins providing care to a patient. The third type of measure, there's Medicare spending per clinician beneficiary total per capita cost, is the episode-based measures. They are expanding the episode-based measures to include 10 new measures. They include everything from acute kidney injury to renal stone surgical treatment. There are almost a dozen new ones, so if you are participating in those episodes of care and you meet certain case minimums, now across these 18 total episode-based measures, there may be a third cost measure that applies to you in these overall 15 percentage points. The cost category can be complex, even though this is all kind of happening in the background since you're not required to report it. But HealthMonix absolutely has a new solution that they are proud to announce that is going to help you with this category that is set to rise in percentage over time, as we now know based on the final rule. Mike?
Sure. Thanks for passing it back over, Robin. Before I get to my final couple slides here, I did want to share with you that we've had a number of outstanding questions that I will be asking our consultants, Joy and Robin, to answer moving forward. But this is your time to get more questions in if you have any. If we don't get to your question, we will answer it via email by the end of the week. So I also want to share this great bit of news. I'm introducing Cost Pro. It's actionable insight into your cost. HealthMonix has become the first company to work with CMS as a qualified entity to get your data for your Medicare patients. That's not only yours, it's those patients that are attributed to you. We'll be launching this product in 2020, giving you the opportunity not only to take a look at your MIPS cost component score and figure out where you are throughout the year, but also giving you the raw data so that you can look at it, fix it, and see where your gaps in care are, see where your outlier patients are, insight into care occurring outside your practice, your HCC scoring, costs and changes over time, and identification of patients that are high cost for you. We will have more information on this as the new year comes, and we will also have a webinar in the near future going over our cost module so that you can see how it could benefit your practice. So for more information, you can feel free to ask questions to HealthMonix below. Also, to sign up, visit MIPSpro.com and use the discount code 2020RULE. I apologize for having the wrong code on the left-hand side, but on the right-hand side, you'll see 2020RULE, and you can use that code to get yourself a discount. So please ask us your questions over on the GoToMeeting webinar link on the right-hand side. And I am going to start off asking Robin and Joy the questions right now. We get the performance bonus. Is it one lump sum or is it a percentage of each payment check?
Ooh, I'll take this one. I love answering this question. It is not one lump sum. So basically the payment, what happens is for every clinician in your organization is going to be assigned a new reimbursement rate for your Medicare Part B claims. And so it may be what's going to happen is as you submit your claims throughout the year, that when you get reimbursed, you will be reimbursed at, either a higher rate or a lower rate or a neutral rate. So you'll experience the change in your revenue all throughout all year long. It's not going to be one big jump at a time. So basically, every reimbursement will have your new reimbursement rate assigned to it.
Thank you very much, Joy. Following up on that, another one of our attendees asked, when can a clinician expect to receive MIPS adjustment factors for 2019 performance? Another question we get an awful lot.
Yep, and that also can be, I'll take it and let you take the next one, Robin. But it can be super confusing. So there is a 2-year look back. And basically the work that we are doing right now in 2019 is going to affect your 2021 payment year. So just as we are currently in the 2019 payment year for work that happened back in 2017. So that continual 2-year rolling look back is basically how they make adjustments.
Sure, great, thank you. Here's a question from a radiologist. In case of non-patient facing practices like radiologists, how is the reweighting of the categories going to pan out?
So primarily what happens here for radiologists is that there is an exclusion in the PI category for promoting interoperability. And so those 25 points are reweighted over to quality. So that makes quality rise that much more. And then improvement activities and costs are still the two other categories you'll participate in at a static rate of 15% each. So quality becomes 70, improvement activities are 15, and cost is 15.
Great. Thank you, Robin. And there was a number of questions on here regarding the 2020 measures. Would one of you mind sharing how the 2020 measures, where we can find them, as well as what are some of the changes?
Sure. So they have not updated their website yet. So, be aware that the final rule was just published last week, and they have an unpublished version that you can download from the Federal Register. So that's your, we talk about it. That's your 2,400-page document that outlines all the details that, frankly, most people don't want to read. And they detail the measures and the changes to every single one in the appendices of that. So eventually, and over the course of the next weeks and months, they will put that online, and it will be available on the QPP website, so you can drill down through that search category. But currently, the option to identify what the changes are, I'd point you directly to the final rule, and just if you're searching for a specific measure, you can look it up by its quality ID number. And so, I have the short list of measures that have been removed and changed, and one of them in particular, I believe, is 226, which is a common one. That's the tobacco screening. I don't know the spec change in detail, but I know that it has changed. So I would point you to the final rule at the very back up. It's like the last 200 pages.
That sounds like great reading. Thank you, Joy. Another question here is, where do we get, is there still a small practice bonus?
I do not believe so. I think that what you are referring to, for quality measures, if you are a small practice, if you, there's a 3-point floor versus, those larger practices had a 1-point floor. So there is kind of still some safety net, in small practices reporting measures, that if you do report a measure, you're kind of guaranteed to get a minimum of 3 points. Like, that's nice. But as far as an official small practice bonus that gets tied to the end, I do not believe that is still there. I will confirm that in writing, but I do not believe that is still there.
I agree with you. Thank you, Joy. Next question, and this is a question that we know is going to come, but how would a practice do the minimum reporting necessary to get the 45 points to avoid the negative payment adjustment? And before one of my friends hops on here to discuss that, this is where life is changing for MIPS. It's no longer going to be easy to avoid the penalty moving forward. They're expecting people to score well and do well in this program, and those who cannot keep up with it are going to be penalized. So go ahead.
Yeah, so this is definitely, Mike, we absolutely concur with you. This is the first year where you would be incredibly hard-pressed to participate in just one category, and that would mean absolute perfection in the quality category. The 15 points in cost are usually unknown. We can look year over year or at facility-based previews for people that might have an inkling about what cost might be, which makes your new tool so important, because cost is kind of elusive, right? So I guess, you could go after the PI points and the improvement activity points, but you're still going to fall short and end up incurring some sort of penalty. I always like to remind people that value-based care in these initiatives is not limited to Medicare as a payer. all of the payers have these programs. Alternative payment models are very sophisticated. So MIPS is the lowest common denominator. So Joy and I and our team, we are always encouraging people to participate in multiple categories. And we still do have people that come to us at the last minute and want to do something. It is going to be incredibly difficult, which is why I think what you were just calling out is such a game changer. Incentives are going to rise, and the penalty pool corresponding congruently. So I don't know that we feel really great about offering a 45-point only strategy for anyone looking to mitigate the penalty. It's possible, but you still got to dabble in multiple categories and to hope you come out ahead.
And I'll add to that. I think that, we have experienced over the last several years that people kind of leave MIPS on the back burner, or they don't pay attention to it until they feel they absolutely have to, which oftentimes happens to be the last quarter of the year because of the last 90-day reporting period that typically starts the beginning of October. But with this 70% data completeness requirement for category, for quality, if you're trying to get any points or any significant points in that category, you can't wait that long. It is really going to be more and more important to have a strategy earlier on in the year.
Great, thank you. I did want to give everybody an update. I was able to look up the small practice bonus for 2020. The rule has not changed from 2019 to 2020. The rule did change prior. In the 2018 year, 5 bonus points were automatically added to a small practice MIPS score. Starting in 2019, CMS will add 6 measure points to the numerator of a small practice quality performance category score, as long as the small practice submits data on at least one quality measure. The addition of 6 measure bonus points generally represent 10% of the quality performance category score for small practices. A small practice is either a practice with 15 or fewer MIPS eligible clinicians or a solo practitioner. So there's an update on that for our guests here. We have time for a couple more questions, but I wanted to see if we can get them in here. You said the adjustment is applied to Part B claims. Does that include drugs or just the physician schedule?
So it is Part B services only. While most drugs can be grouped under Part D and it would not be applicable, I would remind you or everyone on the call listening, there are certain drugs, especially chemo type drugs, that do fall under the Part B schedule. So whether you are penalized or you are incentivized, it is all Part B services, professional services and claims rendered under the Medicare fee schedule. So it specifically excludes Part D, but we can't solely classify that as drugs.
Sure, thank you. Can you please confirm that the opioid measure was removed for 2020?
Yep, we certainly can. So they did not, that was proposed and they kept it in the final rule. So for the promoting interoperability category, that one bonus measure for including a signed opioid treatment agreement within the EHR is only relevant for the 2019 performance year. So that will remain as an option when you're testing for 2019, but it is going away for 2020.
Okay, and last question, and remember, anything that you guys ask from now moving forward will be answered via email after. Follow-up questions can be sent to contact@healthmonix.com as well. But the last question is there any remedy available for a practice that has not adopted the 2015 CERT reporting system, but wishes to take advantage of the incentives available?
Well, the option that you would have if you're not updating your EHR would be to not focus on the promoting interoperability category. You would focus on quality and track it through other means. And, one way to do that is even if you do have an EHR, but it's not certified to 2015, you could work with a partner like HealthMonix. So you could still do registry-based reporting for quality measures. Of course, you would, given if you're a small practice, reporting as a group. You have an option to report via claims. That's an option. Or potentially look into QCDR. So understand that without the 2015 edition certified EHR technology, you still have the 15 points available to you from improvement activities and the 45 in quality. You just have to find another way to report them. It wouldn't be through your, well, it's the PI, the promoting interoperability, that requires the 2015. So that's your limitation.
Great. Thanks, Joy. I appreciate Joy and Robin being here to help our people, through our attendees through MIPS in 2020. We will be sending out a recording as well as the slide deck. And I know Robin and Joy want to give one last slide regarding their program that they're running right now.
Yeah, we offer 3 easy ways to help, whether you want one-on-one personalized consulting for your practice through one of our teammates. We also have in the coming months our 2020 MIPS manual that's available on Amazon. If you're still in a lightning round effort for 2019, you can find the existing one there from Joy Rios, who is a 4-time published author on these programs. Or we offer a virtual environment now for MIPS Flight School, where for a low monthly price, you can have subscription level access to receive expert guidance on staying organized for MIPS. You get a free copy of the manual, and there's a question and answer forum and live monthly classes so that you can have access to all of the resources and directly to us. Whether you're new to MIPS or you're a proven expert, you can have our trusted support in any one of these ways. So if you have any questions, feel free to contact us directly as well. We're glad to be the trusted consulting partner of HealthMonic.
Thank you. Have a nice day, everybody.